Today, I want to be talking about our stale grants, our boring grants, our unsuccessful grants, and why they're that way and what we can do to change that. I'm Amanda Wallander Roberts with Capacity Building Consulting, and I support nonprofits in understanding how to get the funding they need in order to fulfill their mission. The first thing I want to talk about today is why it's so important for our grant applications to stand out. And it seems like, yeah, of course they need to stand out, but I really want to walk through it so we can keep that in mind as we are refreshing our grant narratives. So really, the first reason is because there are so many organizations out there, and there are so many good causes out there that if we are applying for different grant opportunities that are the right fit for us, meaning our organization is aligned with the funder's mission, then we are going to be applying with other organizations that are similar to ours. So for example, if we are an animal serving organization and we are applying for a foundation that loves supporting animal serving organizations, then that means a lot of animal serving organizations are going to be applying to that. So not only are there tons of good causes out there, but there are also so many different organizations within our particular, corner of the sector. And when we are applying for the right grant opportunities, we are, in that same pool with all of the other organizations in our corner of the sector. So why is yours the cause that they should fund? That's what your grant application really needs to answer, and that's why it needs to stand out. Because if there are so many good causes and there's so many good organizations within your corner of the sector with the same cause as you, then we really have to take our grants to the next level to show, hey, here's why, yes, this cause is important, but here's why our organization is important for this cause. The problem is most grant applications are just boring. And I know a lot of us think like, oh yeah, but my application isn't boring. What I write up isn't boring. It is. I can almost guarantee you your grant application is boring. And that's so hard to hear and hard to say, but it's really important that we keep that in mind so we can shift that. So why is your grant application boring? Well, one of the major reasons is, as we're writing up grant applications, we're so passionate about our organizations, but we forget to incite the passion of the people reading, right? So we're already passionate about it and we think, oh yeah, why wouldn't you fund this? This is so perfect and important, but then we don't lay it out for funders. We also don't often directly connect our narrative with what the funder cares about. So even beyond us being passionate, forgetting that other people aren't passionate, why should they be passionate? Even if, let's say it's an environmental organization and they really care about the environment, why should they care about it in the way that we care about it? You see what I'm saying? Why should they care about how we address the problem or work to solve the problem? That's what we need to say. So why should they care about our organization? Because honestly, these days, everything is an emergency. Everything feels like it's on fire. We have to care about everything everywhere we turn. And honestly, a lot of people are just tired of caring. It's kind of that like compassion fatigue. We're just tired of caring about all of the terrible ills that we see all around us in the news, just like everywhere we turn. We're so burnt out about caring. So if we don't connect our grant applications to directly what the funder cares about using their language, why are they going to care? You know what I mean? We have to take that extra step. Another reason why a lot of our grant applications are boring is because we are bored when we're writing them. If we're bored when we're typing up our grant application, when we're writing it, the people who are reading our grant application are going to feel that and also be bored. Seriously, if I don't know if you've read through a lot of other organizations' applications, but I have, and most of them, it's like, I can tell when they were excited about things and I can tell when it like tapers off. It's like, oh, we're so excited to talk about our mission, but then our history, we're like, don't get very excited about it. Or sustainability plans, like there's no energy in that section of the application. We can't be bored when we're writing. So three ways to really stop being so boring, but also to make our grant application stand out. And the first one is that just to genuinely be excited when we're writing grant applications. And I know that can be so hard. You might be saying like, but Amanda, I hate grants. And honestly, that's okay. If you hate grants, if you hate writing, that's okay. But think, when you're sitting down working on a grant application, like, what gets you excited about your organization or your mission or your program or project that you are trying to talk about? What gets you inspired? Why is this something you're passionate about? Because if you can't communicate that through your grant application, it's going to be hard to convince funders to be passionate about it for you. You know what I mean? So you have to actually sit there and be inspired. Maybe it's watching a, client testimonial video that you have, or maybe it's, reading some of those open-ended survey questions where they're giving you positive feedback. Maybe it's looking at that card that a client sent you that was thanking you for their services. Whatever you can do as you're sitting down to write your grant application, whatever you can do to get excited, to get inspired, to remember why you're so passionate about this mission, it is going to help your grant application. Seriously. It's kind of a weird suggestion. Honestly, it might be a little bit counterintuitive, but it's so important to sit there and actually feel excited as you're writing your grant. So my second way to stop being so boring, my second way to, make your grant application stand out is to really be concise and straightforward. So I recently did a training where I had organizations pair up and talk to their neighbor, and I gave them like 10 minutes to talk about their different organizations. And at the end, I asked people to raise their hand and describe their partner's organization. So not their own organization, but their partner's organization. And this was a very engaged training. A lot of people were talking and asking questions and raising hands. And it wasn't that people weren't interested in raising their hand. It wasn't that they were shy, but they just could not describe their partner's organization. There was one pair and one of them could describe their partner's organization. The rest of the people, it was 30 or 40 people in the room, could not even briefly, even say 3 words to summarize their partner's organization. And you know what that told me? We do not have our, elevator pitches ready. We do not have our concise, straightforward, brief language ready to really capture people's attention and connect with them. So when we are working on grant applications, we need to make sure we are so concise, so straightforward, so not filled with jargon, so on everybody's level that a kid could read part of your grant application and understand it well enough to describe it to you. Think a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old could sit there and be like, oh, this is exactly what your organization is about. If you don't have that, your reader's eyes are going to glaze over. If we are using so much jargon, if we are getting so technical with it, if we are being so flowery in our language and so vague that we can't connect people with what we're actually doing, then their eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to be like, what are you even saying? I don't even get this. We like to talk about our organizations in these grand terms. We like to be so, inspirational in our language in a way that really takes out the meaning of what we're trying to say. So when writing up your grant application, in order to stand out, you have to be able to actually connect with the reader. And you can do that by being more concise and more straightforward and easy to understand. So just easy to understand, and then you can explain it in further detail later in your application. So the third thing you can do to make your grant application stand out. So the first thing is actually be excited when you're sitting there writing your application, and then being so straightforward and concise that people quickly grasp what your organization is about. The third thing is really having your grant application answer the question, why should we care? Why should anyone care about your organization? When I'm working with different organizations and helping them create grant language, that's one of the first questions I ask them. I'm like, convince me to care. And I'm like, I know this sounds rude. I know this sounds really abrupt and harsh, but like, why should I care? Why should the funder care? If your grant application is not answering that, I know they're not going to ask that. That's not one of the questions that you're supposed to answer. That's not one of the requirements you're supposed to meet in your grant application. But if you're not answering that, that's not going to help them care. Because another organization with a similar mission to yours in that same corner of your industry, of your, sector of the, or part of the sector, they are answering that question. So if you're not, the funder's not going to know why they should care. So if you can't find the answer when you're reviewing your grant application, if you can't very specifically point to, oh, why should they care? Here's why they should care. Here's why they should care. Here's why they should care. And it's written out like that, like it's an answer to the question, why should we care? Then you need to put that in. Go back to your grant application and put that in. So just to kind of recap all of this, it's so important for your grant application to stand out because there are so many good causes, but there are also so many good organizations in your part of the sector. And if you're applying for a grant opportunity that's the right fit for your organization, then you're going to be in a pool with other people with a similar cause to you, or the same cause to you, or the same programs as you. So your grant application needs to stand out. Most grant applications are boring because we are passionate about our organizations, but because we are already passionate, we forget to get other people passionate. We forget to put that in our grant applications. We also don't connect our narrative to what the funder actually cares about. We are not connecting those dots in a way that uses the funder language and really focuses on the funder's perspective and helping them fulfill their mission. We're also just bored. We're bored when we're writing grant applications, and that really comes through. It really comes through in the narrative, in the feel of the application, just the emotional response people have to the words you have written up in your application. So to stop being so boring and to make your grant application stand out, be sure to sit down and actually be excited when you're writing a grant application. Excited or inspired or passionate, whatever tricks you need to use to connect to that emotional part of yourself, do that. Because when we're just sitting there, hunched over and just this is drudgery, it comes through in our grant applications. So actually be excited when you're writing a grant. Be so concise and so straightforward in your grant application that a kid could read it and really instantly get, oh, here's what your organization does. So concise, so straightforward, so, omitting jargon that a kid could read it and really connect very easily. And then also answer the question in your grant application, why should the funder care? Why should they care? And if you don't know the answer to that, then you really need to rethink your whole grants approach, your whole pitch for that grantor when you're working on that grant application. So I encourage you, we are going to have a follow-up discussion about some of these things in our free Facebook group called the Successful Grant Writers. I've got a link in the bio. We would love for you to join, but be sure to answer the questions because we only let people into that group who have answered the questions. So I hope you all have a great rest of your week.